My name is Richard Vigne. I'm the CEO of the Old Pejeta Conservancy. Thank you all for joining us on this webinar, second webinar. We're going to have a brief chat from Samuel Letitia about the wildlife conservation activities here, particularly with regard to rhino, followed by Moses Muthoki on the community development program, and thereafter Anik Mitchell with some exciting developments in our tourism product. So once again, thanks for joining us. Apologies for the full start. I hope you can hear us now. Please do type through if you can't, and we'll proceed. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to be taking you through Rhino Conservation Program, as Richard has pointed out, and my name is Samuel Letitia. There are two important things that you need to keep in mind as we begin this session. One is that Pejeta has two main species of black rhino, rhino in Pejeta. And the first one is the eastern black rhino, which comprises 106, and it is the largest population of blacks in East Africa. The second is the whites with the two subspecies, and the first being the northern whites. We only have 3 remaining on Earth, and these 3 are found within Pejeta. The other is the southern white, and there is 25 of these. And these were very instrumental actually at the point when the northern white rhinos were introduced into Pejeta in trying to get them to behave natural, to create that element of competition and to get them to breed. We shall talk about the northern white rhinos in a bit as I continue. The sanctuary actually began in the year 1989, and around about this time, the population of black rhinos had drastically dropped from around 20,000 individuals in 1970 to only about 400 in the 90s, and the government was seeking for secure areas in which to bring together or consolidate the remaining 400 scattered across the country. And Sweetwater's Game Reserve, which was the name of the sanctuary back then, was an ideal place. And between the year 1989 and 1993, we introduced 20 blacks as the founder population within the sanctuary. The only other major introduction was in 2007, following an expansion of the sanctuary from the 24,000 acres with an addition of 50,000 to create a sanctuary that would take 120 rhinos in general. And these allowed us to be able to introduce 27 new individuals from a number of other sanctuaries around the region. This was, of course, to restock the area that was expanded, and at the same time to invigorate the gene pool of the existing population at that time. The southern whites were introduced in the sanctuary in 2006, and these were predominantly from Lewa Wildlife Conservancy, which is just neighboring to Pejeta. And the northern whites that I just talked about came in 2009, when we only had 7 of these northern whites known to exist. By and large, the population has grown, and we currently have 134, comprising 106 blacks plus 28 whites. The reason for growth can be attributed to many things, including suitable habitat. But one thing is that we uniquely are able to identify every single individual in our population, and that means we are able to collect data from these individually, and this data is accurate. And we're able to do this because of the notches that we introduce on the ears to help us mark individuals uniquely and to allocate numbers that match the ID issued to each rhino at birth. There are several ways of monitoring rhinos in a population, and we use a number of these. We do on foot patrols. We also do use technology here and there, particularly when we have individuals that we need to recite severally, those that we are treating, for example. We also do fly every once in a while, not only to make sure that our habitat is secure, but at the same time to ensure that each particular rhino that goes missing for a number of days is seen. The other thing is that we also offer protection in an elaborate manner to ensure that this population does not suffer poaching. The population has grown, as I said, from the beginning in 1993, from 20 to the current 106, meaning we've sustained a growth rate of up to 6% across the years. And based on the fact that, we know each member of the population and we know the ideal intercalving interval, which is the age between successive births, then we're able to project the sort of population we're going to have in the next couple of years. And we know that by 2018, we shall have hit our carrying capacity, which is the optimum number of animals that we can maintain here at Pejeta without compromising the ability for population to grow. And that, of course, is of concern to us, and we are thinking of expanding northwards. We've had a bit of success in that. The land just adjacent and to the north of Pejeta, Motara Wildlife, Motara, ADC Motara, was able to donate 20,000 acres of land. And these 20,000 acres of land will be a dispersal area for the growing population. A lot has been done in the area to secure to make it conducive for rhino keeping. And we also hope that as time goes by, we shall be able to spread further into Laikipia National Park, which is north of Motara Wildlife Conservancy. And these will generally bring on board 37,000 acres that is able to sustain up to 200 rhinos in total. And that is a significant population in this region. Just to talk a little bit about the northern white rhinos. When they came in 2009, the idea was to get them to breed. And indeed, through mixing and separating and letting these roam freely with the southern whites, they were able to acquire the natural tendencies. And this, of course, enabled them or spooked them into wanting to breed. And in 2012, there were actual physical mounting and copulation, but as time went by, we began to doubt whether these had conceived. It takes about 18 months for you to have a conception and a successful birth. And in 2015, we actually were forced to, put the animals down and check whether or not they had conceived. And the sad news is that we discovered that they had not. And there were reasons to this, one of which the younger female had complications with the uterus and could not conceive naturally. The mother had a problem with the hind leg, quite weak, and was not able to, and is not able actually to carry pregnancy to full term. The male also had a problem with the sperm count, and that is natural because it's a very old male. And that means that naturally we may not be able to breed this population. And from the committee of experts that make decisions on the best approaches to take with regard to managing this population, we have identified IVF as the first option that is arguably one of the best for trying to breed this population. The next step then will be to get eggs or ovums from the females that exist here on Pejeta, and externally in a lab scenario, be able to mix these and create and take the results and implant in a surrogate, which is meant to be a southern white. And hopefully this will breed a new pure black rhino calf, and with successive such procedures being repeated successfully, then we could actually rescue the population. Although we do admit it is very tricky and not easy to achieve. Generally, Pejeta is an ecosystem, and this ecosystem has a number of species, diverse in nature, and in fact, diverse habitat. And these are actually managed together with livestock ranching activities. And these, if done cleverly, we know and we have been able to demonstrate that we can achieve a profitable business venture. But we also acknowledge that the community component and the communities that surround Pejeta are key and critical to ensuring that we continue to succeed. And with me here today is Moses Mothoki, who is the community manager and who will be taking you through a number of activities that we are engaging with the communities living around us. So thank you very much, Moses.
Thank you very much, Samuel. I'm also glad that you're joining us in this session. My name is Moses Mufoki, has been said, and I will be talking about community development programs. So in community development, we work around 4 main areas, which is education, as you can see, agribusiness, health, and energy. And we work in a region that is overall 370 square kilometers, an estimated population of about 56,000 people in 11,000 households. In our education component, we dealing with about 36 schools, which is a tall order considering that the levels of need are very high. We have about over 500 groups. These are farmer groups, it could be women groups, or even youth groups. In our health component, mainly we have support to 6 health centers. And just to mention, in 2015 we had a spend of slightly over 750,000 US dollars. The communities that you're seeing in the map are represented by a democratically elected community representative who works as our liaison person to the communities. So feel free to type in your questions. I'm already seeing some, and I think I'll be addressing them towards the very end of my presentation. So I have an overview of what we do within our education component. We have what we call global education and expanded learning spaces. And basically, this is inclusion of ICT tools in teaching learning process. And when we talk about global education here, I refer to the ability to link some of the schools we have here with schools in North America and Canada. At the moment, we have 19 active connections, which means that the students across the 2 different areas in the world are able to interact, whether it is on cultural exchange material or even on academic projects. We also have a vibrant scholarship program. At the moment, we have 57 students that are under our sponsorship. And our concentration around this area is mainly in secondary education because we believe that where the biggest constraint, this is where the students are mostly vulnerable and likely to be dropping out of school. For example, considering that in higher education, we have, for example, loans if it is at the university, or they're able to access other sources of funding. So, and then we have a very huge area to handle under infrastructure because we work in a very remote location. The schools are really constrained and the level of need is very high. To just mention, we did an assessment back in 2014, and overall the estimated cost of infrastructural needs in the schools was running into about 600 million Kenya shillings, which is really a huge amount. So, and then to back it all up, because all the support that we provide or interact with the communities, there must be a conservation element to enlist the support of this community. So we have conservation education, and what this involves is getting messages on conservation issues across to the students and the young people, and this is sort of as an entry into the entire communities. In the agribusiness plan, so we have we work with communities around livestock issues. We have a cattle fattening plan with some of the communities. We're able to get livestock from these communities, fatten, and then also support them in terms of marketing. And in addition to this, we also have artificial insemination services, which are offered to the communities as a way of improving the genetic pool for the livestock, which is at also a very subsidized cost. We have water harvesting, which is twofold. One, we have a provision of water harvesting resources, which is for domestic use, and we also working with farmers because considering that we only have rainfall of between 350 and 900 millimeters a year, which may not essentially be suitable for the kind of traditional farming that we have around this area. So water storage is important. So through shallow water pumps at the household level supports the farmers in growing their crops. So there is also promotion of higher value crops. In this regard, we're talking about tree, which from where we have some oil extracted and used in the beauty industry. There is also rose geranium, for example, different varieties of mints and others. So we also have conservation agriculture, which is a modern practice in agriculture, because basically what it means is that there isn't much turning of the soil, whether for planting or for cultivation, and that helps to retain soil moisture and also ensures that the planted seeds actually remain within the most fertile part of the ground. In addition to that, we have a health component. We look into, and this is where I mentioned that we work with 6 health centers. But in addition to this, we also work very closely with the government hospital, the Nanyuki Teaching and Referral Hospital. We support in terms of equipment, in terms of medical supplies. We support these health centers where we have infrastructural needs. It's also a tall order. But then in one of the locations, which is to the north of the Old Pejeta Conservancy, we actually do not have a health center, and the closest a community member can access healthcare is about 35 kilometers, which is in Nanyuki town. So we have mobile clinic outreaches, and this happens twice a month. So we are able to mobilize a health team that goes on site and provides these health facilities, health services. And then we have an energy plan. So basically, the key component of this is energy saving stoves, which we have established through a survey that has enabled cutting down on firewood use to as much as 65%. And this is installed or constructed in the kitchen. And has worked very well. The demand is huge, and we see this as an opportunity to actually bring down deforestation. And then at the institutional level, we work with schools. We've been providing huge solar systems able to power an average boarding school. And then we also provide basic solar lighting lamps at the household level. Because most of the schools that we have are actually day schools, and therefore when the pupils come back to their homes, then a source of light definitely plays a significant part on how they perform in their schools. So I think what is going to be happening is that for us to be able to support all this, then it becomes important that we generate funds within the conservancy, and tourism department actually spearheads this with our overall reliance at about 70% of the income that is generated. So at this point, I'm going to be inviting Anik Michal, who is our tourism manager, to take you through issues to do with tourism, and then we will be responding to the questions after Anik's presentation. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anik Mitchell. I am the Tourism Manager for Old Pejeta Conservancy. My second presentation to a computer, very exciting. As Moses says, tourism is the main revenue generating activity for Old Pejeta Conservancy. It's so important for us that we involve and educate all visitors that are coming through this conservancy. We have, as many of you already know, a number of conservation activities that are available to all of the visitors that come through this conservancy. We will continue to develop each of these activities so that we are basically offering the very best that we possibly can. We continue with all of our guide training efforts, and we work very closely with the other departments in the Conservancy, particularly the Wildlife Department and the PR and Marketing Department, to make sure that all of our conservation messaging is coming across through everything that we do. In line with this, we have actually got two brand new activities that we have introduced to our portfolio of existing activities. One is the baby rhino Ringo, who's actually a baby southern white rhino who was abandoned by his mother. And then we also have an Evade Our Tracker dog activity. The baby rhino activity, Ringo is his name. He is extremely cute. It's very, very unfortunate that he was abandoned by his mother, but also extremely lucky that our team was on standby to rescue him. Essentially, what we would like with both of these activities is to include our visitors into the wider conservation picture here. By meeting Ringo, you're not only helping to support his consumption of milk. He drinks an awful lot of milk at the moment, and it will only get more and more. But it's also a great opportunity for people to get emotional with a rhino. I think meeting a baby rhino is a definite tug on heartstrings. And it gives our team on the ground an opportunity to speak the wider picture of conservation, and particularly rhino conservation, with our visitors. The Evade the Tracker dog activity is extremely exciting. Many of you will know that we have got a dog unit on our Pejeta Conservancy. These are active dogs, and they work in our anti-poaching efforts. All of our dogs are friendly. I need to reinforce this idea. They're not all attack dogs, so to speak. And basically, what we've decided, or how we've decided to roll this activity out, is that these dogs need training every single day. I think as a dog handler, when you're out training, you always sort of anticipate where you're going or what kind of tracking you're going to be doing. But by asking tourists to be the poacher, so to speak, and hide in bushes and do wiggly courses that our dogs can then sniff out and follow, visitors are actually contributing to the training of these dogs. So for us, having people involved in these activities, it's a much bigger picture than just trying to get revenue from people. This is actually allowing people to be properly physically involved with everything that we offer on the Conservancy. One of the other things that we've been working really hard on with the tourism department is what we call visitor touch points. Not the most exciting label for a slide, I do apologize. But basically the visitor touch points is, for us, it's an opportunity to be able to share in the correct conservation messaging for the Conservancy. We have realized over time that a lot of our visitors arrive to the Conservancy with independent guides, as in guides that are not trained by our Pejeta Conservancy. And a lot of our conservation messaging has been lost, you know, in general conversation with guides that perhaps don't know exactly what's happening on the Conservancy. One way that we're dealing with this is to introduce a whole load of communication boards, so to speak. This slide actually shows the rhino capture box at the Marani Information Centre. Inside this rhino capture box is all of the information that anybody would need to know about black rhinos, what it takes to protect black rhinos and rhinos in general. It's also got a big board on Meet Baraka and how much it costs us to look after Baraka, the black rhino. And it's also obviously got the metal rhino box outside, which has become quite an iconic photograph that's shared on our social media sites, which is great. He also happens to be a donation box. For us, if a visitor comes to the Conservancy, this is one way that we are ensuring that they are reading the correct conservation message for us. We've done the same at Hippo Hide, which is a forest walkway basically on the river. That area promotes information about the forests or the riverine forests, as well as hippos and hippo activity on our Pejeta Conservancy. In the future, as in this year, 2016, we are working on redesigning our chimpanzee information center so that, again, up-to-date messaging is there and a little bit more informative for those visitors that are coming through. And we'll be doing the same with the Marani Information Center as well. We've also introduced places such as the Rhino Cemetery, which sounds a little bit morbid, but essentially it's a tribute to all of the rhinos that have been poached on our Pejeta in the last 10 years. For us, it's really, really important that visitors understand that our struggle with poaching is a very real struggle, and that all of their contributions to the Conservancy through gate entry fees or through their participation in our activities is actually being used properly in a way that we can hopefully fight and overcome poaching on the Conservancy and wider. We do, as a tourism department, we have a lot of opportunity to work both with our tourism partners as well as tour operators and direct visitors to promote activities that we do on our Pejeta Conservancy. I'm sure a lot of people know that we're already offering a 10% online discount. So if you log into our website and look for Book Now and book and pay for your park entry fees online, you instantly get a 10% discount. This promotion will be ongoing throughout the year, and it's a really fantastic way of discounting your entry into our Pejeta. For us, we'd also enjoy the fact that we're not having to deal with cash at the gate, which is our underlying mission there. We're also going to be offering, coming up into the low season, a 10% discount off Pelican House bookings as well as campsite bookings for anyone that books and pays for those properties through our online system. The other great exciting thing is that we're introducing a membership scheme for our fans of our Pejeta Conservancy. There'll be 3 different categories. One as an individual, second would be as a couple, and the third would be for families. And essentially by paying for a membership at our Pejeta, you will then be given unlimited access or free access into the conservancies for the validity of your membership, as well as an 10% discount on various activities that are happening within the Conservancy. We will also be rolling out a series of conservation presentations. Again, for us, it's about engaging people and educating our visitors. The conservation lectures or talks will really just help to give a wider picture of what is going on the conservancies. Our rangers will also be doing ranger talks. I've been chatting away here, but I do see that there's a vast number of questions that have come through. So I think, to be honest, it might be best that we address these questions so that we have time to make sure that everyone is, or all queries are covered. Many thanks for your attention.
Okay, thanks Moses, Samuel and Danique. It's Richard back here. Aside from the questions saying, sorry, we can't hear you. We'll try and address the ones which are a little bit more interesting. First one is, how is OPC capitalizing on these unique species to attract both local and international market to draw numbers to OPC? That's from James at Denio. Thanks, James. We do a lot of we pride ourselves on being the biggest black rhino sanctuary in East Africa. So I suppose black rhinos and rhinos in general are our signature species, but we also pride ourselves on being a really good, high-quality conservation organization. So we would hope that we have that the wildlife that people see here is prolific and is representative of all of the species that people coming to East Africa would like to see. And we certainly have really good numbers of all of the predator species, including wild dog, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just about the special species, the northern white rhinos, although you can go and see those, or rhinos in general. It's about all of the other species that make up a typical East African savanna system. Next question. Around 2013, this is from Henry Muthia, you began a project of using drones for surveillance. This came to an end after the ban on drones in the country due to concerns of security. What is the way forward? It was quite innovative and powerful. We even featured the story in our travel blog. Thanks, Henry. The whole issue of drones in conservation has been a little bit of a red herring, if I can put it that way. The problem with drones is that unless you have hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend, the technological capacity, and by that I mean their duration of flight, their ruggedness, the quality of their camera, et cetera, is rarely sufficient to make a meaningful impact in terms of our ability to prevent poaching and to provide a security option for the Conservancy. And that's been the general consensus across most of the world, in fact, where drones have been used. I'm sure that technology will develop as we go forward, and I'm sure that the mechanisms for control of drones in collaboration with people on the ground, which was the other complication that we had, will also develop. But right now, we feel that good boots on the ground and good intelligence networks is really the way forwards, and we've been reasonably successful together with the local government and the senior government, plus the Kenya Police and the Kenya Wildlife Services in stopping poaching on Old Pejeta and in the areas around us, particularly from the perspective of elephant poaching. Next one is another one from James Adenio. OPC remains a model in various dimensions. What is the strategy in creating peace with the communities? Well, I think James, we did talk about that a little bit. You know, we have a community development program. If you talk to the founders of Old Pejeta, they'll tell you that they want Old Pejeta to be a conservation organization and an engine for economic development. And that's what we try to achieve. In other words, if the communities value us, then the chances are they will support us. So that's the reason for doing that. Next question, another one from James Adenio. What is OPC doing to promote cultural tourism, as there exists a lot of opportunities? Yeah, we certainly have a lot of opportunities around here, and we try and do it as much as we possibly can, and I'm sure we can possibly do more. I think one of the challenges we face on Old Pejeta is that we're trying to do so much in so many different areas that we have to pick and choose a little bit. But that's definitely an option that we will consider developing a little bit more in the future. Next question, are there any early childhood educational activities supported by Old Pejeta? James, again, I think you're asking primarily about conservation activities, or at least conservation education. We're developing that a lot. We have something in the region of 25,000 school kids coming through here per annum. We also support a lot of schools, as Moses explained, in the neighborhood. I think it's over 20 schools. So there's a lot of stuff we're doing in the educational sphere. Education from a kind of Kenya curriculum perspective, but also conservation education, and it's something we'll continue to develop. Next question. We have recently set up an e-learning platform calling the e-learning hub. Can we work together to make content available to your schools? Henry, the answer is most definitely yes. Moses is busy writing me a note saying he'd love to discuss that with you. His email address is moses.muthoki@olpejetaconservancy.org. So by all means, feel free to get in contact with him. We're definitely doing a lot of e-learning stuff, either connected to the internet or not, as the case may be. And it's a developing area for us. So the more help we can get, the better. And thank you for your offer. Next one is, what is Ol Pejeta doing to encourage forest cover? Again, we do work with communities on planting trees. We've got some big programs on that. We're looking at all sorts of methods of reducing our carbon footprint. So the chances are that Ol Pejeta will become almost entirely solar over the next 3 to 4 years. We're also working, as Moses explained, on reducing fuel usage through the use of fuel-efficient stoves in the communities, and that's a community program where community members develop the business of building those stones with subsidized support from us. And that's having a dramatic impact. So there's a lot of things we're doing as well as planting trees. And I think we need to address that issue from both sides of the equation. Carrying on, how would you quantify the effect of your efforts in the communities? I think the best way I can answer that is by telling you that in a recent survey carried out by our partners, Fauna and Flora International, I think it was over 86% or 85% of the respondents in the communities stated that they had received some benefit from Ol Pejeta, and that's amongst communities of around about 57,000 people. In fact, it was 68%. So, we're doing the best we can. We spent $750,000 last year. In our 2020 plans, we'd like to get that up to between $2 and $3 million a year. But obviously, all of this takes time to build. Does Ol Pejeta support GMOs? Would it work around the community chambers? GMOs. What is a GMO?
Genetically modified.
If you're talking about genetically modified stuff, James, that's not something we spend too much time discussing, if I'm honest. But I think that's we'll take the lead from the Kenya government on that. And if it becomes something that is allowed, then obviously we would support whatever the government policy is. Next question from Lorena Hoffmeyer. We had a great visit last October. That's good news. Thank you. Alas, no wild dogs, but I knew in advance they were further north. Got a spectacular photo of one of the northern white rhinos. Within the fenced area, which I realize is for species protection, what other species are there besides the northern white rhino? It seemed that during this visit I encountered a lot less animals than my previous October visit, but did have an excellent 2-hour viewing of 2 cheetah brothers. One thing that I think everybody needs to understand is whilst we're fenced as a conservancy, we do have corridors, and those corridors allow the movement of wildlife in and out. So there are times when wildlife may be slightly less than has been the case in the past, and it does depend on the conditions of the range. So, for example, if you happen to go to areas which they were in October very dry, then the wildlife will tend to be elsewhere. But generally speaking, our wildlife numbers are doing reasonably well. There are definitely fluctuations and a diminished, because of the high predator numbers, actually, we have got a situation where prey species are a little bit reduced at the moment, but that's something that we expect to recover over time in what would typically be expected in a system of this type. In the northern white rhino enclosure specifically, we have a small herd of Grevy's zebra, which is a founder population, which we hope to grow with a view to restocking other areas in northern Kenya. And I think there's 21 Grevy's zebra in there now. Next question, what percentage of OPC management time is dedicated to the communities? The answer is we have a full-blown department that does it. And I would say all of us are integrally involved in supporting that community development department. It's key to our success and therefore receives significant support. Do communities appreciate OPC? I think we've answered that. The answer is yes, generally speaking, but we can always do more. What percentage of visitors for the past 12 months have been the domestic market? It's around about 55%, I think, isn't it? 38% local, but that doesn't include the school kids.
No.
Okay, so if you don't include school kids, which is 25,000, 38% came from the domestic market, which is massive growth. We saw a growth in the domestic market last year of 36%, over and above 2014. Interesting to note, we saw our international market, which I think is common across Kenya, diminishing by about 40%. So that's a trend that we need to reverse. Are tourists offended by seeing watching livestock? The answer is no, so long as they see more wildlife than livestock, and so long as it's explained to people. The integrated model is something which is important in terms of making ourselves as productive as possible so we can pay for the costs of conservation. Does Ol Pejeta have a loyalty program? The answer is we're developing that, particularly the membership scheme that Anik discussed. And James, this is your question. You will know that the more people come, especially if they're tour operators, the bigger the discounts they get, particularly in the hotels. So the answer is yes. Thank you for the next question. Thank you for this wonderful webinar concept. How do we interact with this as a potential tourist? We're always open to people calling us, emailing us, doing whatever. So, please do go to our website, interact with our website, and if you'd like to make contact with any of us at any time, we'd be willing to talk. Balloon safaris is something we've looked at. We actually don't think it's something we can do here because of high winds. So it's not something we're considering at this stage. Plus, it's also can be quite disturbing to animals. We're going to run out of time in a moment, and there's still thousands of questions, mainly from James and Denia. So James, thanks for all your questions. We've still got 10 minutes, so I'll keep piling through them. How is Marani's memory kept alive? Marani was a rhino, for those of you who don't know, and he was here for about 25 years, I think it was. There's in the rhino graveyard, which is actually quite an interesting place to go to. It sounds morbid, but actually it's quite an emotional place to go to. He has a big cairn there. In fact, he's buried there. So that's how he's remembered. How would we rate security? Good. We have to secure our rhinos, and that means we have to have very tight security because of the poaching threat against them. So we invest a lot in security, and obviously we hope it's good for animals and tourists alike. How does Ol Pejeta tick in comparison to the several conservancies in Laikipia? The answer is, well, I think we're good. I think we're certainly more accessible than most. We have around about 80,000 visitors a year. We've got a range of different camps to suit all tastes and price points. We, I think, have a reasonable reputation, and I think people, when they come here, have a good experience. So I'd like to think that we're good. Henry in Bhutia, what are the rates on the membership packages you just talked about? I think probably the thing to do, and we've got your email address here, Henry, is we'll contact you directly, and then you can enter a conversation about that with our tourism department. So Anik will come back to you. This is from Carolyn Getao. How do the community, especially the children and youth, actually participate in your conservation activities? It's difficult to have them participating completely. We do run conservation experience days, and we do, as I've mentioned on a number of occasions, have around about 25,000 kids coming here from around and about Laikipia and other parts of Kenya every single year, and we do try to give them a genuine conservation education experience. We also have an outreach program to schools where we show videos and that kind of stuff. So, it is an area which we would like to expand, both nationally and internationally. We consider it fundamentally important that our kids are properly educated. How are you addressing human-wildlife conflicts? Incident a few weeks back of elephants wandering into farmlands. It wasn't elephants, actually, Kea. It was bush pigs that were causing the problem. Human-wildlife conflict is an issue across Kenya. It's an issue in Laikipia. We do our very best to contain it wherever we possibly can. There are complications, particularly given that we don't really have jurisdiction over this wildlife, despite the fact that it lives here. And actually, the responsibility for managing wildlife issues is vested with the Kenya Wildlife Services, particularly when they leave Ol Pejeta. But we definitely try our best. We need to do more. It's a central plank of our 2020 plans, and there's a lot of investment required to make it happen better, not only around Ol Pejeta, but across Laikipia as a whole. And we're instrumental in helping the government, the county government, try to do that. Next one is from Philip Grobler, Philip visited Bush Camp twice, and Alex Hunter is doing amazing things. How can you leverage more of his setup for a win-win? We work closely with Alex in a variety of different ways, actually. He's about to make a significant investment into his camp, together with the Acilia Group, which is a sort of highly renowned camp or tourism group. Alex in future will be coming with me when we go on fundraising trips to the US and various other places. So we do a lot with him. The key to all of this is to get our guests, be they at Alex's camp or any other camp for that matter, fully immersed into our conservation activities, which is what Anik was trying to explain. And that way they win because they get a quality experience, which is what we're all about. And we win because we raise some revenue, plus we get the opportunity to educate people about the issues facing conservation, not only here, but globally. Paul Hefferman, how much exchange of knowledge and information is there with other conservation programs elsewhere in East Africa? Is it a successful exchange? The answer is, Paul, we could do more. We have some fairly close tie-ups with conservation organizations in this country, particularly Lewa and Borana, but also closer to home, people like Segera. So I think locally in Kenya we do quite a lot. Again, we could do a whole lot more. Internationally, we get visits here on a regular basis. We had the Botswana government here the other day who want to replicate our rapid reaction force and the way we've managed that to stop elephant poaching in Laikipia. So there is a lot. Again, it's one of those things that we could be doing a lot more of. My views on the new KWS Director General, I can't remember his name, but I know who he is. Kitili Mbathi, I'm just being told. Everything I've been told about him is that he is a very good fellow from the private sector, albeit not conservation. If I can be frank, that organization needs quite a lot of sorting out right now. So we hope that he has he's given the space and the political support to make it happen. Good response on, this is from Henry, good response on the question of drones. Henry, I suggest we go offline and potentially talk about that. I'm richard.vine@opegetaconservancy.org. So if you want to email me, I'll be happy to try and help. Paul, great webinar. Wish I had been aware of you when I visited Amboseli and Nakuru Mara last year. Definitely do come and see us, Paul. We can offer as much, if not more, than all of those places. Lorena Hoffmeyer, thanks. These webinars are very informative. You've got 2 friends coming in September. Please do get them to contact us directly if you would like. Anik is anik.mitchell@opegetaconservancy.org, so they might want to get in contact with her directly. Henry, recent partnership between Opegeta Bush Camp and Acilia Africa. Yeah, it's not quite as simple as a sale, but he's definitely in partnership with Acilia, and as a result we'll be making some significant investments into his camp, which I think will improve the overall quality of his product. Jonathan Kibet, considering OPC is the best in East Africa, what efforts are you doing to help other conservancies and ranches in Laikipia County? Jonathan, that's a good question. We'd like to do a whole lot more. We are working with a lot of communities. We do, for example, myself and Giles Prettyjohn, our livestock manager, were down in the Mara the other day advising them on cattle matters. So again, similar to my previous answers, we need to do more of that kind of stuff, and we set ourselves up as a role model. So not only do we go out and try to help other conservancies, but we encourage them to come and see what we're doing. Last but not least, Henry, you've told us that we're doing a good job, which is great. Thank you, and thank you for listening. Do we get nightmares thinking about the huge responsibility of species survival placed on your shoulders? The answer is no, not really, because the responsibility sits firmly and squarely on the shoulders of every human being on the planet. So we don't see it as only our responsibility, but in fact everybody's responsibility. Okay, everybody, sorry we whizzed through those, but we're running out of time. Thanks again, all of you, for listening, and we'll try and do this again in 2 or 3 months' time. Thank you very much indeed.